Hello, hello. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another session at BMO Festival 2023. Today, we have with us Darren Lee, who is a product designer at Agoda. And we're going to talk about data driven approach to design and why they work.
All right, thank you
So,
so much.
Darren, how's the day been for you?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, you were saying?
Okay. Yeah, I was just asking, how's the week been for you?
Oh, the week has been great. It's been a bit busy at work, but things are gonna. I'm looking forward to the end of the month, which is coming soon. Like exciting
Yeah,
events happening, like the iPhone 15 release. I think it's gonna be quite
yeah,
crazy.
yeah, that's true. Okay, so over to you, and let's get started. Excited for the session today.
All right, thank you so much, Akarsh, and hello everyone on the call. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you in the world you may be at. I'm dialing in today all the way from the bustling city of Bangkok. Though I'm currently based here in Thailand's vibrant capital, I started my journey all the way from sunny city, state of Singapore. My name is Darren, and it's a pleasure to be here at this conference with you all. Okay, so let me do a bit of an introduction of myself. Right, I'm a product designer. I love coffee, and I love traveling. Did you learn something about me? Maybe just a little. So what I've just shared is like a little data about who I am. It's a bit of a teaser and a glimpse into my world. But imagine if I shared a bit more like data about myself. Wouldn't it tell you who I am as a person? So let's crunch some numbers to give a sharper image of who I am. I've been shaping experiences as a product designer for 2.5 years at Agoda, which is an online travel agency or OTA for short, where we offer like hotels, vacation rentals, flights, airport transfers, and activities, particularly with a strong presence in Asia. And we're also part of the Booking Holdings Group, which includes Booking.com and Priceline. So in this 2.5 years, I worked on consumer-facing features like the booking form and cart feature, and it's a privilege to be here and to work with a talented and awesome supportive team. So shout out to all of them. I've learned and grew a lot here. So thanks for the unwavering support. And for the second point, my love affair with coffee. It's a rather serious relationship. All right. You see me downing like 2 to 3 cups almost every day. It used to be worse, like 3 to 4 cups. But I've toned it down a little. And yeah, my job is also a perfect fit with my passion for traveling. 2023 has been a great year to fulfill that wanderlust. So far, I've gone on 15 trips this year and counting. How's that for a traveler from me? But big disclaimer, I still get work done despite all these trips. If you count it out, there's an average of like a trip every 3 weeks, which can be pretty tiring. Okay, so today I thought I opened the doors to show you guys backstage of how we get things done at Agoda, right? And maybe to some, I might try to even like stir up that data enthusiast in you, especially if you're in the field of design. And why is that so? Because embracing data can power up your arguments, refine your design decisions, and simply make you an even better designer. It's like adding a turbo boost to your design engine. And while this talk may particularly be well suited for designers or anyone in product who has the luxury of tracking and utilizing data, it's not limited to these folks only, right? I hope that everyone here will have, get back from this session at least with some interesting nuggets of knowledge. And it's all about opening your eyes to data. Along the way, if you have any questions, leave them in the Q&A tool here, and I'll get to those when I can or at the very end. Okay. So let's start with some definitions, right? Data is information and is collected in various forms. There's two types here, quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative deals anything that can be measured or expressed in numerical values. Qualitative, on the other hand, is about the details on like and focuses on the why and how what is happening. but despite their differences, they work best when they're together. So for each type of data, there's different methodologies of obtaining this data, right? Quantitative methods such as analytics and experimentation will help us measure and quantify user interactions with precision. And experiments will help us test hypotheses and solidify our understanding. On the other hand, we also have qualitative methods such as user interviews or surveys. And these insights will help us understand how users are directly engaging with our our platform and gathering inputs in larger amounts. So these are just a few, but for today's session, I'll just focus on these four top methodologies and explore them in greater details along the way. So why should anyone design with data? Right, there's a few reasons, right? Namely three that you should be and why you should be utilizing them on your day to day. One, you want to convince your stakeholders and increase their confidence. So more than just numbers and figures, data becomes your convincing ally or tool when it comes to decision making. If you need to get your stakeholders' approval on a design decision, intuition or guesswork, such as like, oh, I think or I feel, may not carry as much weight as showing like hard facts or evidence, right? In fact, you'll be speaking the same language as your product stakeholders in the room, and that you get your buy-in. Two, evidence-based decision making. Uh, Designing with data helps us to validate our theories or suspicions and even expose like any misguided assumptions that we might have. So this guides us towards decisions that can stand on solid ground rather than on just intuition and guesswork. Lastly, uh, designing with data helps us to identify opportunities for improvement. It's like being given a roadmap to success, right? It highlights the areas that needs attention, like you will be able to see where some areas are lacking or where there are opportunities that we might want to focus on. So these are the areas that the data will be able to expose when you use it in your work. With these insights, you'll be able to enhance and continually uplift the user's experience. And one last thing to note is that designing data is not just about enhancing the product. It's about a mindset or refining your mindset and approach. So it's more of a mental like methodology to employ in your work. Okay, so it might seem a bit hard to understand right now. Let's put an example. Right, everyone in this call here uh, is like a product stakeholder at Amazon. So this is a very exaggerated example where I edited the CSS of the website, right? And your KPI is to improve conversions of items on a product page. And me, I'm the designer, and I'm about to share a design solution for making changes to the main CTA. And I'm trying to convince everyone here, my stakeholders. So which of the following is more convincing, right? Let's start with the first one. Right? I'm changing the button from buy maybe to buy now and changing it to orange color. And this is what I would like to say to all of my stakeholders here is I believe the copy matters a lot here and it's better than before. I think users are willing to click on the buy now button more. Users should be able to understand this better. So that doesn't seem too bad, right? But what if I add some data into the mix? We experimented with a similar copy before and it converted 25% better. Users interacted 30% more with the buy now button. And additionally, 4 out of 5 users we talked to said they also preferred it and understand it better. So which is more convincing to you, right? At least personally to me, the right side sounds like a better argument because there's undisputable facts in this case and not just my opinion. But at least to say, the left side is also not entirely wrong because it's in a discussion setting or where you're still in early stages of your design solution or exploring. This kind of conversations help to help us consider more opportunities or possibilities too. Okay, so now that we understood a bit better of like why we should be designing with data, um, let me share more about how we view data at Agoda. So Oh, sorry. Despite our diverse roles here, everyone at Agoda um, uses the same language, right? We all speak the same universal language, and that is data. It isn't accidental because it is a vital part of our unique culture here. Whether you're a designer like myself, developer, marketer, product manager, we have one common expectation, and that is to be embrace and be familiar with data. So to be more data literate. Okay. For example, we also encourage experimentation to learn and iterate fast, and we shouldn't say no unless proven otherwise. And that's something that is rather unique to Agoda compared to the past experiences that I have. And this unified approach towards data is what makes Agoda very Agoda. And on top of that, we're also very well equipped in Agoda to handle that data. So we're geared with the right tools to handle the numbers and come out on top. For example, we have an arsenal of like latest software tools such as analytics or huge databases at our fingertips that aids us in harnessing the power of data. We also have access to extensive data training, which is instrumental in helping us, unravel the potential of these tools. And those who are more experienced, we also had designers and product managers running workshops like Data 101 or tutorials to optimize the usage of these tools. And I've been very grateful for all of these resources and trainings to help us understand how to better utilize it. In addition, we also have a wealth of information on our internal wikis where we're able to find the best ways to get started or even find anything that's data related. And let's not forget our unsung heroes, which is the business intelligence or the data support that we get. They're always here, just an email away, offering support, guidance, and insights if we need them. And the best part of all, these resources are not locked behind any doors. It's accessible to everyone, irrespective of the role. And that's the beauty of the culture here, where data democratization is right at our fingertips. So let's dive deep into the methods here, starting with analytics and design. So, what is the role of analytics in design? Have you ever wondered how your product or design impacts your users? This is where it comes into play. It's the collecting, scrutinizing, and leveraging of data, which gives us a front row seat to understanding our users' behaviors, their likes, their needs. For example, we know exactly where they click, what they ignore, or how they navigate across the pages of our platform. Now, imagine if you apply these insights into your design, you'll be speaking directly to your users' needs and improving their experience. So, through design analytics, we're letting our users guide us to create designs that not only look and feel good, but also make the business smile, meaning like we hit all the objectives. That's what I call a win-win-win situation. And where do you apply analytics, right? I kind of like think of it as putting being in the role of a detective when you're diving into design with analytics. The numbers are just like clues. So that's how it feels like when you use analytics. You get to understand every user's moves, their behavior, and it's just like unraveling clues left at the scene. With these clues, we play detective, come up with hunches and hypotheses about what might improve their experience or solve their problems. And then there's also discovering trends within data about unraveling these patterns that with the story of how the design impacts our users. So when you have all of this, like we can finally connect the dot and paint a more comprehensive picture. Everything we learn, starting from the user behavior, trends, and even our hypothesis, can tell this beautiful story. And some of you might be asking, right? Analytics, is it worth it? Analytics is not easy work because you need to spend time and resources to build systems in place and to even understand the data. But why bother with it? Is it worth investing resources? That's a good question. So let me shed some light into why at Agoda we believe analytics is absolutely valuable in our design process. It helps us understand our users and why they're interacting with our design, pick up on key characteristics of them, and lead to the heart of their needs. Because if you don't understand your users, how can you solve their problems or even retain them as users, right? So it helps us to understand and spot different trends and patterns along the way too. Lastly, um, analytics also offer us a reality check of measuring whether our solutions that we design work. They provide hard evidence that showcase the resulting impact of our work that we can measure in a very concrete way. It's like looking at a report card of your work. Um, Remember how you were in school and you want to know the results of your like your test. Uh, in this way, analytics is that analogy of that report card where you're trying to find out if something works or not. Yeah. So it sucks when you've done the test and you don't know how well you did it before. I'm sure you understand that feeling. So don't be like this guy, right? If you don't track your data, you wouldn't know what's working or what's not. So here's an example to make it easier to understand, right? For example, let's say you're presented with the objective of increasing traffic to the property page, because you're assuming that more traffic equals to higher conversion, and that's the main thing that you're looking at. So you're curious to know like how many people search for hotels and visited a property in the past week. What do you do? Right? Step one, you measure. You want to know the state of things, and the logical state of things is or the logical starting point is to understand the current volume of traffic, starting from the home page the moment the user opens up your app. Having this metric at hand opens an approach to enhancing the user journey, where you can optimize, every step along the way, boosting visits to the property page. So things you might want to find out includes how many people are interacting with the hotel funnel in the past week, clicking on that tile, how many, what percentage of them are dropping off, where else are they clicking on the homepage, and how long do they spend on each of these pages. So this is the entire journey from the homepage all the way to the property page, right? You do not know the numbers because if you do not apply like analytics, you will not be able to understand or have that visibility. But once you consciously start tracking these numbers, you'll be able to get like the funnel journey and see how many of them are interacting. So, for example, if I want to find out how many users are landing onto the property page, I would need to track the hotel tile over here, followed by them clicking on the search button on the search page, and then any of these property cards on the search results page. So, step two, and let's to understand. Let's assume that you got these numbers, and from the search results page over here to the property page, there's about less than 20% of them like entering that. So what does that number mean, right? That maybe up to 80% of them are dropping off, and that could be a bunch of reasons why. We don't know the exact cause. So there's a lot of assumptions here, such as maybe the content is not engaging enough or relevant, the price is not as attractive as our competitors. Um, Maybe the properties that they're looking for is not available during that time, or we do not offer enough useful tools to plan a trip. It could even be bugs or natural behavior of the user, right? There's a lot of assumptions, and it's okay to come up with as many as you can. And step three is to prioritize. Why I say prioritize is because in an ideal world, you have infinite resources, time, and obviously you want to try to solve all the problems. But in the real world, you have constraints. You have limited developers. You do not have all the time in the world, because and we often find ourselves in a situation where we need to wrangle multiple tasks, right? And it's like being in a buffet with a small plate. You need to carefully pick what is worth investing your effort in. So you partner with your product folks and focus on a few things. It could be, developers' effort, right? Prioritizing something that is low effort. We call them low hanging fruits because it's easy to implement and test, or something with high impact. This might be a star performance, which requires some resource investment, but in return magnify your product success. And Next is severity. What if something is causing like a severe issue? It could be legal, it could also be hurting the user experience. So it might be worth diverting some resources to tackle it head on first. And lastly, while I think one of the things that we need to consider is also your team's KPI, because while it may move the dial in certain directions, maybe it doesn't contribute to the business, to your team's goals. So with that in mind, let's move on to the next methodology, experimentation. Imagine this. You work at a pie shop and you've been making apple pies with red apples and selling them. Your customers love them and they gave you a review score of 4 out of 5 stars. But you don't want to settle. You want to do better than that because 4 out of 5 is not perfect. So what do? Now you're interested in trying out green apples to see if there's any changes to your score. So you start selling these pies made out of green apples for a week, and you will only start selling more green apple, more pies made out of green apples if the score is higher than 4 out of 5. That is an example of an experiment where you allocate a bit of resources during a short period of time to test and see if it works better than what it was before. So why do we experiment? And why do we find them so essential? First, as we gathered some hypotheses from the step before, when we look at analytics, we will, experiments allow us to put this hypothesis to test, validating whether they were on point or they missed the mark. Secondly, we experiment so that we can be agile learners. We learn quickly, and it's all about discovering issues or any information as soon as possible, so that we can iterate and pivot our strategies if we need to. Lastly, is also evidence-based decision making. We want more confidence and less uncertainty when before releasing a new feature. In Agoda's case, every time we release something to to the application or the app store, millions of users will be affected by it. So experiments help us replace uncertainties with concrete data, ensuring that everything we push out is backed with solid proof. So experimenting is kind of a way of like maintaining a learning mindset, and also validates our ideas, making smart data supported decisions. Okay. And in particular, what we do here at Agoda is A/B experimentation. So that's the definition right there. Scientific method for decision making, where we show two versions of something that we work on to very similar groups. So for example, if you have this large pool over here of maybe 1 million users, we just take a subset of them, maybe 10,000 or 100,000, two different groups, and we show them like, yeah, a variant of what we want to experiment on. And you will run this experiment for a short period of time to gather and measure if there's any difference, and then you compare the results before making a decision to take the experiment or not. And there's 3 possible outcomes to running an experiment, right? First is negative, where your metric that you set before didn't and it didn't go so well. So what can happen here is that you could either iterate on your design solutions until you improve, or even drop the experiment and treat it as learning. Second is the experiment goes flat. This means it didn't move the margin and didn't affect like the like maybe in Agoda's case bookings. It didn't affect bookings in a negative positive way. And the next steps to this, it really depends. You could take it, drop it, or continue iterating until it becomes positive. So for example, maybe you might want to take a flat experiment for long-term scalability because you make improvements to like components maybe, or you think it's a better UX. That's why you might want to take this experiment. And lastly, which is the most ideal outcome, is when the experiment is positive. You would take it and then celebrate it with the rest of your team because, well, it's kind of validate the theory that you had before, and the numbers show that users are converting better. So here's an example of an experiment on Agoda, right? On the A side, we have the control, which is what we have on production. And on the B side, is the variable. So this example over here is us introducing a share button on the property card, right? So following from before, you after prioritizing with your product partners, which problems that you want to solve, right? For instance, maybe you had a prior or like some findings that social elements can help with more traffic, and came up with the whole following hypothesis of where by encouraging sharing of property, um, users may be more likely to visit the property page, decide in a group setting, which will in turn lead to increased bookings. So that's your main metric, right? And yeah, which leads us to the next step, which is setting your metrics. So overall, your success metric or the main metric should be increase in overall bookings. Secondary metrics are things that we look at that also contribute to the success, and this could include increased visits to the property page, which is what we saw before, or even booking revenue. And next, we also have guardrail metrics, where we want to consider like it affecting any other where, because there's always a cost, and it may not be as obvious before. So for example, maybe if you this experiment won, like it led to overall bookings, but it lead to increased support cost or handling time, then it may be worth doing this experiment over again. Or if it adds load time when you add more images into your application. So next step is where we start to deviate and come up with as many solutions or options possible. So as designers, we know the hypothesis, we have some data points, we'll come up with multiple solutions that we think will solve the problem at best. So this is where we work with our partners, product partners, to come up with different design solutions, and the one that we align on is what we will experiment. So we run an experiment. In this case, we added the share button beside this heart icon, right, which allows the user to share in the property of the choice to anywhere. And then once you run an experiment for a select period of time, say maybe 2 weeks or so, to gather enough information, this is where you compare the results, right? Maybe, and at the beginning, on the A side, you should expect like less than 20% traffic as the same as before. And then on the right side, you should see some changes. So if these are all hypothetical numbers, right? If it's more than 30%, then it's a win. So you take the experiment and you merge it to the main application, and that's when you know that it's helping users or they find value in that. So think of experimentation tool as a trusty library as well of all our trial and error escapades. It's not just about running experiments, because we are able to neatly index every one of these experiments into a well-organized file cabinet. All the learnings come from experiments, and whenever we need to refer to them to make future decisions, it's very helpful for us to go and search. It's like a time machine that lets us dive back into past experience. I would see some comments from past product managers about the learnings, and in essence, like this repository of experiments help us learn, grow, and make more informed decisions for any future experiments. Okay, so we've dived a little into the quite deep into the quantitative side, but we must not also forget about the qualitative side of things. And I'll cover quickly user research and surveys. So why qualitative research methods? Quantitative data tells us what happens, but it doesn't tell us why and how things happen, right? And qualitative methods such as user interviews or surveys can help uncover the aspect. So for example, user interviews and research reports. This is one of the things that we do here at Agoda, right? We talk to users, I think, to find out more about the meaning behind the numbers that we gather. And once we talk to enough users, we will identify themes, and that's where we digest it all and form insights, and put it into report that we share with our stakeholders, and that leads to actionable steps where we can run even more experiments. So when do you employ this, right? There's two types of user research that we conduct here, generative and evaluative. So depending on how ambiguous the scope of things is, or clear it is, you might want to employ different methodology. So when it's more ambiguous, like on the left side here, you want to work on generative research, where you're exploring opportunities that's not explored as much, study the behavior or ethnographic behavior changes that you might not be aware of. And then next is like when the scope is very clear, is you want to do evaluative research, and that's where you validate simple changes, um, or even conduct usability studies to make sure that there are no usability issues before releasing your feature out to users. So we're not alone in this. We work closely with our user researchers in Agoda. Um, And this example over here is us having a moderated session with a user and testing out one of the products or features that we're working on. And it requires a special set of skills to ask questions because sometimes we might come up with leading questions and that lead to bias when you're doing a report. And it might become a he say or she say kind of thing where there's no backing up. So it still requires a special set of skills to be able to do user interviews, and our researchers definitely help us out a lot in this aspect. And last but not least, surveys. So you might argue that surveys could also be a quantitative method because it's lightweight way of gathering responses in large quantities, especially if you're able to put it out for the users. But if you have them in open-ended methods, asking them open-ended questions, you'll be able to find out more about how they feel rather than what have happened. So, and similar to user interviews, you also need to know how to ask the questions to prevent such biases. So, example is like 2,000 out of 3,000 users say that they prefer this version over the other, and they state reasons like that. So these are an example of how we might report survey findings. Okay, so we've gathered all of that. We went through everything from quantitative methods, why you should be designing with data, and then qualitative methods as well. So let's take a quick look at what we've talked about, why data matters and why it works. Analytics as a tool in your hand, experimentation as a mindset, and also like a way of validation. Lastly, research and surveys in order for you to find out about why and how your users are interacting in a certain way. So before I end, I like to share this analogy. Right, picture Batman's utility belt. He has tons of tools like the batarang or even like um, gun. Yeah, so it's not about using all the tools at the same time, right? You don't see Batman throwing and using everything. It's about picking the right one for the right situation. So, for example, you're running an experiment on a piece of copy. I don't think it would make as much sense to conduct interviews about the copy, right? Because you're spending more resources than it would for a simple change where we can run an experiment. So that's something that we want to consider without breaking the effort bank, right? So they're all about choosing the right tools depending on the mission that you have at hand. Okay, so that's the end of my sharing. I hope you guys had took away something from this session over here. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, you can also reach out to me offline here with my LinkedIn. Um, yeah, any questions you might have.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Darren. It was a great session. Let's start with the questions. We have a couple of them in the Q&A box. In case if you have not yet added your question, please feel free to add up in the Q&A box. Let's take the first one. The first one is from Vibin Thomas, a product designer at Mercedes-Benz. The question being, are there any specific metrics or KPIs that you prioritize when evaluating the success of a design project driven by data?
Hmm. Okay. Thank you so much for your question, Vipin. So, any specific metrics or KPIs that you prioritize when evaluating the success of design project? So yeah, at Agoda we have different teams, and every team works on its different set of features, right? And the KPIs could differ from one another. So, for example, I'm working on the trips team. Like, I think there's this misconception that Agoda only offers like hotels, but we, we have also like flights, activities, and more on our platform. So, my KPI in the travel platform team or the trips team is to increase conversion of all these other funnels. So even though accommodations is our primary like driver of revenue in Agoda, um, I'm specifically looking after the conversion of these other funnels, and that's where I prioritize conversion of these over hotel. So any feature that I worked on, I will have the hotel in mind at the back of my head, making sure that it doesn't hurt conversion on accommodations while lifting the the conversion of flights, activities, and so on and so forth. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, yeah, let's go to the next one. The next one is, how do you get buy in getting data, especially when the team thinks there is too many unnecessary elements?
How do you get buy-in getting data? Hmm. Okay. So it really depends on the situation, right? But I think what helps here at Agoda is the culture. We use it as a whenever we want to make arguments or get a point across. It's definitely more convincing when you have some data points. So it may be unnecessary, but it makes us more well aware and give us more confidence about making a decision. Sometimes it might slow us down. That's one trade-off that I can think of, but you need to weigh, especially with a company as big as Agoda. We also want to be very careful about what we push out to users because there are some hidden costs or things that we might not be aware of. So we try to use it as much as possible whenever we can. Unnecessary depends on where you're at in the stage. Maybe very early on, it might be too much, but it definitely does inform and doesn't hurt. Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's go to the next one. The next one is from Gabriela, a product designer from Germany. The question being, which tools do you recommend in order to do a A/B testing?
Okay. So at Agoda, we have an internal tool that allows us to do experimentation. Obviously, I'm not sure if other companies offer the same because maybe there might be solutions out there that might benefit, but I'm not too sure about that. But there's also another way of doing A/B testing, and that is like um, comparing before and after, right? So it may not be setting aside a pool of users from a set population, but rather you just do a before and after effect and measure if that has any change. I think that would be a lighter weight way without coming up with your own internal tool.
Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one is from Greg from US. The question being, companies such as Agoda have built internal A/B testing platforms. What
Yes.
advice do you have for others at smaller companies or design studios to get these insights?
Yeah, I think it was partially covered just now. Um, there's a lot of ways to validate because you may not have the resources or even the right tools to get validation. The example that I shared just now, where you do a just launch it to production and see if there's any effect. Of course, there's risk involved, but at least you'd be able to have a direct measure of what has changed. Secondly, you can also do A/B testing, maybe through user research. Like you share whatever you have on production to a set of users, and then you share like a mock-up, a prototype to to the same user and see what his reaction is. You do that with a few users to get better sense ultimately it's building the confidence that you need to launch this like feature or get validation of whatever you work on.
Okay, we've got an interesting question up here in the chat. Let me pull it up. It's from Rekha, and the question being: every time it is not possible to do a physical user research at that moment of time, what method we can follow? And so there is a follow up to this. Should we depend on assumptions or internal team experience and research in this case?
Right. Okay. So yeah, especially with the what happened with COVID, we do not have as much like in-person interviews, right? And my experience with that is we've also rely on online interviews. It's definitely not as effective because you can't see their body language, or especially if they turn off the camera, you may not be able to see the facial expressions and how they actually interact with a certain app. So there's definitely more complications when you can't do that in person, but you can also run this user research or interviews online. As long as you are able to get some reactions or quotes, I think that those are data points that you can use in your argument when trying to convince your stakeholders. So online is a great alternative if you can't do physical user research.
Okay, thanks, Darren. And maybe let's take the last one for today.
Okay.
And this is from, let me try running through what can be the best one. Okay, yeah, maybe let's take this one. This is from Marisol. The question being, how many is a standard number for qualitative, especially if you really find it hard to get participants?
Oh, that's a very good question. Okay. So I think it could really differ from product or feature type because insights or like might be hard to gather, or even employing like some participants may be a problem. But what I remember from Nelson Norman Group is that to discover 80% of your problems, you can just talk to 5 users. There should be an article online that shares about that. But if you're validating a concept, even talking to just 3 or 4 users and not by yourself, I think is really a good approach already. So in my mind, I would say the ideal number is more than about 5 users, just to get a ballpark sense of like what whether your concept is working or not. Hope that answers.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Darren. And that's all for the session for today. Thanks a lot, Darren, for making time for joining us, and thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us today. We have a lot many sessions still that are going to run up in the BMO Festival. So hope to see you around in the next ones, and have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hope you have